I received 3 letters with incredible, but true, stories. Different places, different people, yet all with the same thread, an ordinary moment that turned dangerous. A conversation that started online, and ended with someone knocking at the door in the middle of the night. A friendly chat between an artist and an admirer, that turned into a trap inside a quiet McDonald's booth. A harmless message from a fellow tourist, that led to a barefoot escape through a crowded fairground. Simple beginnings. Chilling endings. I'll read them to you. He found me online, then showed up at my door. I wasn't looking for love. I was looking for someone to talk to while the city went quiet after 10 p.m. He found me in a film forum, of all places, some thread about comfort movies. His username was Night Shift, and he replied to my post with a joke about how I probably watched the director's cut of everything and fell asleep during the commentary. It was nothing, just a line. But it felt easy. For weeks, it stayed easy. He said his name was Aaron. He worked odd hours. He sent pictures of his cat asleep in a laundry basket and a chipped mug that said, "World's okayest employee." We traded playlists and half-finished poems and snapshots of midnight snacks. He never pushed for more. If I didn't answer for a few hours, he sent a single leaf emoji and wrote, "Drifting?" It made me smile. It made me forget the tired rules I had set for myself after the last breakup. No late-night confessions, no strangers who knew where I lived, no believing in connection at 2 a.m. Looking back, the first red flag was small enough to step over without noticing. He remembered everything. A throwaway detail about my building's ugly green carpet became a running joke. A comment about the corner market's burnt coffee turned into a nickname. Burnt Coffee Girl. When I mentioned that I kept a plant on my window ledge, he asked what side the sun hit in the morning. I told myself it was attentive, not invasive. People begged to be seen. I was being seen. The second red flag had a sound, a screenshot ping. He shared a map with a blue circle in the center, covering my neighborhood. "I might be downtown tonight," he wrote. "What are the odds?" I told him it was a big city and odds didn't apply. He apologized right away, said he didn't mean to weird me out, said he was just laughing at how small the world was. I forgave him because forgiveness is easier when you're lonely. One rainy Thursday, we moved from the forum to a video call. He kept it short, 10 minutes, slowly lit apartment, cat tail crossing the lens. He looked exactly like his pictures, which felt improbable and reassuring. His voice was softer than I imagined. "I like your laugh," he said, and my face went hot like I was 16 again. When we hung up, he texted, "You make ordinary feel like a story." I saved it. I read it twice the next morning, then again at lunch. That weekend, my building's front door lock jammed. I mentioned it in passing. He sent 3 messages in a row: "Be careful. Call your super. Don't open for anyone who knocks." I told him I wasn't helpless. He sent a thumbs up and a skull emoji, and said he trusted me. For a day or two, I walked around with a little pocket of warmth in my chest where the caution should have been. The night it happened, the power flickered in my block. The hall lights died, then revived, like the building took a shaky breath. I set my phone flashlight on the counter and made tea by the dim light of the stove. My apartment is small, a rectangle of kitchen folded into a living room, a narrow hall, a bedroom with a window that looks over an alley. I liked the coziness of it, the way sound traveled, the way you could hear your own key in the lock from bed. I locked the door, the deadbolt, and the little chain. I remember telling myself, out loud, "Safe." He texted at 11:43, "Are you awake?" "Yeah." "You?" "Passing through your neighborhood." Thought about saying hi, but that would be creepy. "Very creepy," I wrote, with a winking face I didn't feel. 3 minutes later, someone knocked. It wasn't the neighbor's knock, the polite 2-tap question. It was a steady, patient metronome. 5 knocks. Pause. 5 knocks. My scalp prickled. I muted the TV and stood very still. Something in me, the old, stubborn part that hates being told what to do, dragged me toward the peephole anyway. The hall was a dim tunnel. Our motion sensor lights were still glitching, so the bulbs buzzed with a sleepy orange. A person stood very close to my door, too close for me to make out a face, just a hood and a cheekbone and the shine of a phone in their hand. The screen lit blue, then went dark, then lit again. My phone buzzed. I'm joking. I didn't knock. Promise. Then are you okay? The figure shifted, and in that tiny movement I recognized the profile from his video call, the slope of the nose, the particular way his mouth compressed when he was thinking. The tea in my stomach turned to ice. I typed "go away." Then deleted it. Then typed, "This is not okay." Deleted again. My hands were shaking so hard the letters blurred. I set the phone down and reached for the chain with my other hand, purely instinct, as if a thinner bar of metal could make a thicker kind of safety. The knocking changed. The patience fell away. It came fast now, hard knuckles on old wood, a rhythm that said, "I know you're there. I know you hear me." I backed up until the backs of my knees hit the couch. The cat hissed at the door from under the table, lower and meaner than I knew she could sound. He texted, "Please. Just a second. I think we're meant to meet in person. We already know each other." Then I brought your favorite candy. The sour kind. Then, as if it were a magic word, trust. I dialed 911 and held the phone without pressing call because I am the kind of person who worries about inconveniencing strangers. The knock stopped. The building fell into that brief, humming silence old buildings have, the pipes, the fridge, the distant TV through drywall. I exhaled. Then the doorknob turned. It turned gently at first, testing the slack. Then it twisted hard enough to rattle the chain, and the door jumped against the frame like a heartbeat. The deadbolt held, the chain strained. A thin slice of the hall appeared, a line of shadow and dull carpet, and a glimpse of a black sleeve. I didn't remember moving, but I was at the door with my shoulder set, pushing back. "Leave," I said, and heard my voice split between anger and fear. "I'm calling the police." The knob stilled. He exhaled, a soft, almost disappointed sound. "You don't have to make it weird," he said through the door, like we were bickering at a party and I'd overreacted. "It's me." The chain quivered. For one stupid moment, I pictured opening the door and giving him a gentle, reasonable lecture about boundaries. Then I pressed the green button. The dispatcher's voice was steady and bright. I gave my address. I said, "Someone I met online is trying to get into my apartment." I said his username, and the first name he'd given me. I said I was alone. The dispatcher said help was on the way. She told me to keep talking. I told her about the cat, about the broken lock downstairs, about the rain. It all came out like inventory: lamp, couch, breath, fear. On the other side of the door, he went quiet. Then I heard footsteps, not running, just a casual retreat down the hall. The stairwell door opened and closed. A minute later, my phone buzzed again. "You're being dramatic. I just wanted to see you. You can't treat people like this and expect to be loved." The police knocked with the careful, official knock that wraps at the end like a period. They checked the hall camera, which caught only a smear of motion and a hoodie. They told me to save the messages. They offered to call a locksmith for the downstairs door. They spoke to me gently, like I was a witness and a victim and a person who might be living with a ghost in her phone. For a week after, every sound in the building was his footsteps. Every knock was his knuckles. I changed my route to work. I changed my usernames. I changed the way I answered messages late at night. He sent a final text, "You made me feel stupid," then disappeared like a bad story you close before the ending. I still like comfort movies. I still drink burnt coffee. I still talk to people online because the world is too big not to. But I no longer mistake attention for care or trivia for trust. And when someone says, "I already know you," I check the lock, and then the chain, and then the steady, ordinary beat of my own heart on the other side of the door. The messages got strange. Then he showed up at McDonald's. I was 18, working part-time at a bookstore and saving up for college. My days were predictable: morning shift, a walk through the park, and a stop at the McDonald's near my apartment where I'd sit with an iced coffee, earbuds in, and sketch in my notebook. It was my quiet corner of the world, a place where the background noise felt safe and the faces around me blurred into routine. That's where the trouble started, not in the McDonald's itself, but online, months before. We met on an art critique forum. He commented on one of my posts, a pencil sketch I'd shared late one night. His username was North Glass. The comment was detailed, thoughtful. He clearly knew art. We started talking in the thread, then moved to private messages. He said his name was Mark. 32 years old, freelance illustrator, living not too far from me. At first, our conversations were all about art, brush techniques, lighting references, and the best brands of sketch paper. He told me I had a natural instinct, and called my style raw but deliberate. For a girl barely out of high school, trying to figure out if she was good enough to make a living from art, his praise felt like fuel. But slowly, things shifted. He started dropping comments that had nothing to do with art. "You must get a lot of attention," he wrote one night. "Pretty girl with talent, it's a dangerous combination." Or, "I bet you look cute when you concentrate like that." I laughed it off. He was older, sure, but maybe that was just his way of talking. Then the questions got more personal. Was I dating anyone? What kind of guys did I like? Did I live alone? He joked about taking me out for a real coffee sometime, and I joked back that I preferred fries. That's when he asked which McDonald's I went to most. I didn't tell him, of course. Or at least, I didn't think I did. I might have mentioned the street once, buried in a conversation about the neighborhood. I didn't think twice about it at the time. When his messages got too suggestive, comments about my body, about how young energy mixes with older experience, I started answering less and less. Eventually, I stopped replying altogether. He didn't stop. Messages kept coming, like tapping fingers at the edge of my consciousness. Compliments tangled with guilt trips. "You're different, you know. Don't ghost me like some child." Then one rainy Tuesday afternoon, I was in my usual booth at McDonald's, sketching the condensation on my coffee cup. The place was half empty, the hum of the fryers steady, the smell of oil and salt hanging in the air. I didn't notice him until the bench shifted under someone's weight. He slid in beside me. Not across, beside. It was Mark. Up close, the years between us were sharper than they'd sounded in text. His stubble was a few days old, his eyes slightly bloodshot. The smile he typed 100 times was smaller in person, tighter. "You've been ignoring me," he said. Not a question. I tried to steady my voice. "Been busy. Work life, you know." His knee pressed against mine under the table. The air between us felt heavy, like the space had shrunk to a narrow, airless box. He glanced at my notebook, then at me. "You look even better in person," he said, almost under his breath. I shifted my leg away. He shifted with me. "I thought you were different," he murmured. "Guess I was wrong." His hand landed on my thigh, firm, fingers curling slightly, the pressure enough to pin me in place. The McDonald's felt too quiet then. The chatter from the counter seemed far away. I could hear the sound of my own breathing, and beneath it, something else, his breathing, steady and deliberate, like he was measuring it. I managed a small laugh, the kind you use to diffuse tension. "You're making people stare," I said, even though no one was looking. He didn't move his hand. "You're not scared of me, are you?" His voice had that strange tone, half challenge, half promise. "Because I've been thinking about this for a long time." I grabbed my bag, ready to bolt, but his hand tightened just enough to make me freeze again. He leaned closer, his mouth near my ear. "You shouldn't walk home alone tonight." Every instinct screamed at me to get out. I shoved his hand away, hard enough to make him shift back. The coffee tipped, spilling cold liquid across the table. I stood, my legs shaky but moving, and walked fast toward the door. Outside, the rain had picked up, but the air felt cleaner. I started toward the bus stop, glancing back once. He was still in the booth, watching me through the glass, one arm stretched along the backrest like he was perfectly comfortable. I didn't go back to that McDonald's for weeks. I blocked him everywhere, changed my usernames, and started sitting near the counter when I went out. But sometimes, late at night, I'd get that prickling at the back of my neck, like someone's eyes were on me from just beyond the light. I tell myself it's nothing. But every time I catch my reflection in a cafe window, I remember his last words in my ear, warm and close. "You shouldn't walk home alone tonight." And I still don't. He knew exactly where we were. We were 18, just out of college, and for the first time in our lives, completely free from parents, curfews, and everything familiar. My best friend Emma and I had booked a cheap package deal to Marmaris, Turkey, a week of beaches, cocktails, and late nights. On our first night, we wandered down to the beachfront funfair. The air smelled like spun sugar and grilled corn, the rides flashing neon against the black sea. It was noisy, warm, and crowded enough to feel safe. While waiting in line for the bumper cars, I got a notification from a travel app I'd been using. A guy named Daniel had sent me a message. His profile picture showed him on a boat, tanned, wearing mirrored sunglasses. His bio said he was exploring Turkey for the summer. He opened with something casual. "You girls in Marmaris? I think I saw you on the strip earlier." I showed Emma. We laughed. His profile didn't look creepy, just another tourist. I wrote back a short reply, not giving much away. He said he was traveling with a younger cousin, wanted to know if we'd be at the fair for long. I told him maybe. It seemed harmless. The first time I saw him in person was 20 minutes later, when we got on one of those spinning rides where you sit in a row and the seats flip you upside down. As the ride started, I noticed a man standing a few meters from the entrance, staring up at us. It took a second to place him, the same jawline from the sunglasses photo, only now he wasn't smiling. When the ride ended, he came right up to me. He was polite, smiling now, asking if I'd dropped my sunglasses. I shook my head, thanked him anyway, and walked away with Emma. "That's him," I whispered. She frowned. "Maybe he's just being friendly." We moved to the next ride, a high swing carousel. Just as we were getting strapped in, I spotted him again. This time, he bought a ticket and sat directly in front of us. The swings lifted, and the whole time he kept turning his head to look back, holding my gaze until I had to look away. My stomach twisted. When the ride ended, he didn't leave. He stood at the entrance, leaning on the barrier, watching. Emma and I pretended to be debating where to go next, but the truth was we didn't want to walk past him. "Let's just ride again," she said. We stayed on for another round, hoping he'd get bored. He didn't. He was still there when we got off, still staring. That's when I decided to take a photo of him, just in case. My hands shook as I pretended to check my phone. We headed toward the Ferris wheel, weaving through the crowd, but I could feel him behind us. Not close enough to touch, just trailing, matching our pace. The noise of the fair suddenly felt too loud, swallowing our voices. By then, Emma's face had gone pale. "What do we do?" she asked. "Run?" We had one ride token left. I figured if we got on something long enough, we could plan our escape. We chose the tilt-a-whirl, climbed into one of the little cars, and waited for it to start. He didn't follow us onto the ride this time. Instead, he stood at the entrance, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on us. The moment the ride stopped, he moved toward the gate. That's when I looked at Emma and said, 3, 2, 1. We kicked off our sandals and ran. We darted through the crowd, bare feet slapping the pavement, the cold shock of night air hitting my face. I didn't look back, I just heard Emma's breath, ragged and fast, and the sound of someone running behind us. We turned down a side street lit by a single flickering lamp. I could hear footsteps, close, then farther, then close again. My chest burned, but we kept going. I spotted a restaurant with open doors and music spilling out. We ran inside, past the tables, straight to the back near the bar. The waiters turned to look at us, startled. One asked something in Turkish, but all I could do was shake my head and hold up my hands in a please gesture. We stayed there for what felt like forever, peeking out through the doorway. I saw him once, running past the restaurant. The boy from his profile, the younger cousin, maybe, was with him, trailing behind like a shadow. They didn't stop. When we finally felt safe enough to leave, the streets were quieter. We walked back to our hotel barefoot, holding our shoes, every sound making us flinch. 2 days later we saw him again, this time on the beach near our hotel. He was alone, sitting on the seawall, watching a British woman who was lying by herself on a towel. Emma and I didn't even think, we went straight to her and told her she should be careful. She thanked us, looking unsettled, and started packing her things. I still don't know what he wanted that night at the fair. Maybe he thought it was a game. Maybe he had worse intentions. But I do know this. He knew exactly where we were, and he'd known for hours. And we only got away because we ran. Let me know what you think in the comments. This was Tell Me What Happened. I'll see you in the next story.